From the uninhabited regions of this country, we search for interaction with the American species known as Sasquatch. The cast of Nite Callers Radio began a special mission to expand the boundaries of this multifaceted field and share with our listeners our own quest for new thought and deeper revelations of this mysterious subject. Join us as we continue this journey from our own backyards onward to an international quest for the truth. You are now listening to Nite Callers Radio.
You there?
Hey. Hello? Hello? Hello, hello, hello?
Hello? Yeah, this is Dave Paulides. Yeah, this is
Dave.
Harvey.
Hey, Harvey.
All right, good, you got us. Dave, good to hear
Yeah.
you.
It's good to hear you guys.
Yeah.
So, I think Lori, I don't know if Lori's here yet or not, but this is Mike. I'm filling in for Luke Gross, whose son was very ill and had to be taken to the ER and some things like that. And I think Lauren's here, right?
I'm here.
Yes, and
You're
I'm
there.
back. I just got
You're
thrown
back.
out.
You just got thrown out.
Well, let me start over.
There you
I want to
go.
welcome everyone to Nite Callers Radio tonight. Blog Talk is acting completely crazy. Nobody could call in. It looks like our guests have made it, and I want to welcome them real quick. This is just completely unorganized. Of course, you have told everyone that Luke isn't going to be here tonight.
Yes, I did. I informed them that his son was ill and he would be taking care of family first, and we'll send out our best wishes to Luke and his family. I hope his son gets better soon, and
Yes.
he'll be back on the airwaves.
Yes. Well, thank you, Mike, for coming on and helping us out tonight. It wasn't he was supposed to be a guest host, and it looks
Right,
like he
yeah.
is a host tonight. And
I kind of got thrown in the fire, didn't I?
Yes, you did. It was like, it looks like it's just one of those nights where things happen. So, you had some good news. Do you want to share it with everyone?
Oh well,
Or was
yeah.
that
I guess
for
I can.
private?
That's fine. That's fine. We just we had a contact that came through our website at Texla, and here, very close to where I live, and was talking about a particular area that he had an incident happen 17 years ago. And when I started questioning him back and forth as to the exact location, he started giving me road numbers, and it turns out that his particular sighting was a piece of property that was owned by his family, was directly across the river from where we had all of those recordings that we had from the past 2.5 years.
My gosh.
So
that's confirmation.
Yeah, well, I mean, 17
What?
years, yes. Yeah, 17 years later, earlier, he had had an experience there. His girlfriend then, wife now, had also had an experience. His mother and sister were also had an experience at the little cabin that's on the property. They were kind of bombarded and held captive in that cabin one night by something that was circling the cabin and, just making a what she called an ungodly noise, something she'd never heard. And I saw the cabin yesterday, very small windows, but high up off the ground, and she said that at one point it got close enough that it blocked out the moonlight completely. It was standing between the moonlight and the window, and she couldn't see any form, but it completely blocked out the window. And so she knew it was high up off the ground. It wasn't something small. And and the man that owns the property now, of course, we were talking with him, and I just asked him if we could come back in and into that area, and he said sure. So we regained a foothold into an area that has produced a lot of evidence for us, including tracks and recordings and hair, and we're excited about getting back in there, and going to do that before Honubi too. So we're going to possibly have some new stuff to present there from that one particular research area, and then the hair samples that we had the DNA testing done in I think it's a lab in California. They're getting ready to sequence the DNA. They've actually extracted some DNA from the hair strands, and we're able to. They're going to start sequencing according to the gentleman at the lab. So maybe we'll have that.
How long does that take? How long does that take? Hello? Am I here?
Yes, you're there.
Okay. Mike, how long does that take? Oh, looks like Mike fell out. Gosh, this is going to be one of those nights. Let's go ahead and bring our guests on. What do you say? Everyone, tonight we have David Paulides and Harvey Pratt. Let me tell you a little bit about them. David Paulides holds two. Let me take a breath. Stress. David Paulides holds 2 degrees from the University of San Francisco and has a professional background that includes 20 years in law enforcement. A boyhood camping experience with his father in the late 1960s sparked his interest in Bigfoot. In 2004, he formed a North America Bigfoot Search, where his investigative and analytical experience were invaluable in researching Bigfoot sightings. He spent 2 years living among the Hoopa tribal members, listening to and recording their Bigfoot stories. The Hoopa Project is his first book, based upon experiences in the Bluff Creek area of Northern California. Now, for Harvey, considered one of the leading forensic artists in the United States, Harvey Pratt has spent over 42 years in law enforcement, completing thousands of witness description drawings and hundreds of soft tissue reconstructions. His work has assisted in thousands of arrests with the identification of unidentified human remains throughout America. Harvey's gifted renditions of the witness sightings are illustrated in the Hoopa Project, and even more illustrations by Harvey in David's sequel book, Tribal Bigfoot. For Tribal Bigfoot, David investigates more reports coming out of Northwest California, where he also revisits the Hoopa Reservation and asks witnesses to submit their sighting descriptions to Harvey for the Tribal Book's illustrations. In Tribal Bigfoot, David also travels to Oklahoma and Minnesota, where he begins to realize the true nature of Sasquatch via DNA tests, which that's what we are going to talk about tonight. The sequel tells of how David follows the evidence and discovers they are more human than ape, and learns from Native American elders that the Sasquatch understand the Native American language. Hoopa Project and now Tribal Bigfoot are a must-read. So everyone, we want you to welcome David Paulides and Harvey Pratt. Are you guys here tonight?
Dave's here.
Harvey's here.
Dave? Yay! I imagine you had trouble calling in, did you?
Yes, we did.
I don't know what in the world is going on with Blog Talk today, but it seems like everything has straightened out. How are you two doing tonight?
Having a great day in California for Dave.
Okay.
Warm day in Oklahoma.
Oh, wonderful. I'm so glad that y'all made it here tonight. I really am. Mike, did you make it back?
I'm guessing he's not there either. Okay, wait. Try it now. Mike, you there?
Yeah, I'm here. I was listening.
Sorry. Welcome back, Mike.
It's okay. It just all of a sudden it just was gone, and it's I don't know where I left off, but that's no big deal because Dave and Harvey are our guests, and we need to focus on those guys.
Yes, we do. We do. We're so glad that y'all were able to come in tonight, David and Harvey, and I want to begin like I always begin, but I want to ask each of you, and I guess I'll start with David first. How did you get started in Bigfoot? I mean, what began this quest that you are on today?
I was running an HR organization inside of a technology group, and I'd been doing it for a while, and I was sitting around a table with a group of technology folks in Silicon Valley, and we were having a discussion about how our vacations had went and what we'd been doing lately. And one guy brought up, so anything ever strange ever happened to you guys out in the woods? And everyone went around the table, and we talked about different things, and some people saw some strange things in the skies, and other people heard weird noises, and we just kind of kept talking about it. And the next week we got together and we kept talking about it, and one guy said, hey, well, you guys are going to think I'm nuts, but I saw Bigfoot. And that started a series of questions, and about 2 weeks later, I guess somebody else in the group had enough nerve and felt comfortable enough and said, well, I saw it also. And it was at about that time that I was leaving and going to kind of retire and enjoy life, and I was approached by some people and asked if I would form an organization because I had the law enforcement background, the organizational skills, and they thought the wherewithal to put it together and find out if it was a hoax or if it was real and let the evidence take it where it may. And they gave me the rope to put together our own team, and away we went.
Wow. What about you, Harvey? How did you begin?
Well, really, Dave really lit the fire for me. There was always a little ember burning inside of me. Being a Native American, I have always heard stories from family and other Indians about things that happened in the night and what they might attribute it to, and shadow people, and don't go out there at night, and so I'd always kind of had an interest. And then when I became aware of Bigfoot, I thought, well, that the stories that I've kind of heard in my life, they may have a connection. So I've always kind of paid attention to the Bigfoot stories and the myth, and had always that connection back. And when Dave came along and contacted me, and he just really kind of lit the fire for me to jump off and get involved and with his organization and see what we could come up with.
All right. Wow. That I have a couple of questions I already had in mind for you guys. Lori said that you had traveled. Now, I know about the Hoopa Valley and everything that you've done in the Pacific Northwest, but you've traveled in other parts of the country for tribal Bigfoot. And in particular, my questions focus more about the chapter that's chapter 12 in the book over Oklahoma. Since we are coming up on the Honabi conference and the things that you may have found out from that state.
So
and that's been, I guess, for both of you. I mean, the question is posed to both of you.
What are you wanting them to answer?
Yeah, what's the question?
Well, just a general idea of the type of information that you'd gathered. Was it just general sighting reports, or was it more in-depth studies that were done, or was it again with Harvey? Were you able to meet with people and do artist renderings of their sighting reports and things from that particular region of the country?
Okay, so Dave will start, and I'll say that initially in the Hoopa Project, we centered on a Native American reservation, the largest one in California, in Northern California.
Right.
And from that, we started to get a series of reports in from throughout California, and the credibility started to rise, and people started to feel comfortable, and we started to get information. At the same time, Harvey, living just outside of Oklahoma City, being Native American, he had a wealth of information that was really untapped about Bigfoot and Native Americans in his own state. And coupled with the information we were receiving and the interest peaking at this point regarding the relationship between Native Americans and Bigfoot, it only seemed natural, since Harvey worked for the Oklahoma Bureau of Investigation, had ran around that state for 40 years as a law enforcement career, knew it like the back of his hand, that would be an ideal place to go with his contacts and his expertise to follow up on sighting reports in his area. Now, one of the things I would recommend that everybody do who's interested in research is that when you get a research report, no matter where it is, get on Google Maps, go to terrain, and look at the region around the sighting. And probably 90% of the sightings are within 5 to 10 miles of a major river. And I don't care where you are in the U.S., that seems to be pretty common. And it ended up being true with what Harvey and I were doing in Oklahoma as well. And from there, actually before even Oklahoma, I had spent time in Minnesota following up on similar reports and sightings on a reservation in north central Minnesota. But as far as doing the sketches and finding the people, Harvey and I actually worked together in Oklahoma during that time, and Harvey did draw a series of sketches. They're phenomenal, and I think the witnesses that we had there were extremely credible, and a vast majority of them were Native Americans. And contrary to California, in California, a Native American reservation has a confined border to it, a defined border. Hoopa is 12 miles by 12 miles. There's enough fence defining the border, but it's 12 miles by 12 miles, 144 square miles. In Oklahoma, it's not like that. The natives may have a reservation centrally located with administrative offices, but the people live throughout the area. And I'm going to let Harvey talk a little bit about the contacts and how he evolved on doing the drawings, but I'll tell you that a lot of the sightings center around Native Americans living off a defined reservation, but still the biped having a comfort level enough to make themselves known to the residents at different places throughout Oklahoma. And we covered a vast area of that state. Harvey, maybe you can talk about a few of the drawings you did and some of the people we met.
Sure. And really, I would like to kind of start by when you were talking about terrain. A lot of the sightings and what people talk about were in northeastern, southeastern Oklahoma, where there's it's really kind of like Arkansas. It's hilly and a lot of timber, and there's really a lot of space where there's few dwellings, have huge parks, and the western Oklahoma is rolling and flat, and a lot of people don't realize that there are huge canyons running through western Oklahoma, all across Oklahoma, and some of these canyons have trees in there that are 100 feet tall and hundreds of years old, and there's water runs through them for 20 miles, and so these canyons are just all over western Oklahoma. Years ago, the Indians used to use them as refuge from the weather and as hiding places from the U.S. military or the cavalry. So they hid in these canyons throughout all western Oklahoma and southern Oklahoma. Also, Oklahoma has about 10 ecosystems, so we have a great variety of systems in Oklahoma, different types of vegetation, and we have, a lot of people don't realize, but we have huge groves of berries, of sand plums, and they're just huge.
Wow.
And I worked a case years ago on a cold case and then on a historical case where some Oklahoma deputies were killed in 1907, and I went back there in 2006, and those same berry groves were still there that they talked about in the historical report. So those berry groves just last forever, and they're huge, and these creeks, and a lot of people are really kind of shocked when they hear or someone suggests that western Oklahoma has multiple sightings. So I think that we were even kind of a little bit surprised. And I'm from western Oklahoma. The Cheyenne Arapahoes have 9 counties and it go from central Oklahoma all the way to the Texas line, and we're scattered all throughout that whole area. So.
Well, see, I'm from western Oklahoma too. And I lived there for 25 years. Jackson County. Do you know where that is? It's southwest, right in the corner.
You bet.
Yeah. Well, anyway, I never believed in Bigfoot. Never would have thought. I don't know how many times I camped out there by myself or with my sister and miles away from anybody, and never even thought about Bigfoot. Gave it a second thought. And so I always wondered if they were in the western part of Oklahoma. The eastern and northeastern, I could see that. I could see that. Lots of cover, lots of hills, lots of rivers, water sources. But that's surprising.
Well, there's a lot of rivers that come out of Colorado and across into Oklahoma from there. So there's great resources and trails. The mountain lions come out of that Colorado and New Mexico and follow the rivers into Oklahoma. So, and I just kind of preface that to kind of let's try to get you to understand that the Native American people have always talked about these creatures, these big people, and they have a lot of different names for them. And when we did a little advertisement in Anadarko, Oklahoma, and we were going to give a 1-hour talk, and I really thought there would probably be only 10 or 15 people show up, and somewhere in the neighborhood of 220 people showed up. They were standing.
Oh my goodness, really?
Just for the 1-hour talk, and probably 90% or 80% were Native Americans, and a great many of those people told me a little story about sightings and where there's a lot of activity, and it ranged all the way, and that people came from quite a ways. They came from Texas, but my wife and I were just shocked at how many people showed up and the stories they were telling us. And
well, Harvey, I have a question to ask you. Do you think it's the Native American connection, that they're Native American and they have these experiences with Bigfoot? Do you think it's because they're Native American, or do you think it's because of your connection with the tribes, and those are the stories you're primarily hearing?
I think that primarily there is a connection between Native Americans, and I think that the Native Americans have an association with me.
Mm-hmm.
I have a lot of standing among Native American people based on my professional job. I'm active in cultural issues and traditional activities, and so a lot of Native American people know who I am. I'm one of the Southern Cheyenne chiefs. So when people know those things, they're not afraid to come and talk to me. And I think that's a great deal of why people have opened up to not only to myself but to Dave when we were out there, and Dave was with me. That people were just coming and calling and asking us to come and look and hear and listen, and there was just so many of them we couldn't get to them.
That had to have been incredibly exciting. It's usually like you're trying to pull teeth to get people to talk about it, and for that many to come forward, that had to have been incredibly exciting.
absolutely was not the case. We did not have to go try to pin people down and corner them. Coming to us and offering stories and wanting to talk.
And even with you both being in law enforcement, I would think that would intimidate people, especially on this subject. So that's just fascinating. So you think it's the Native American connection, that the Bigfoot? What I am curious about is why Native Americans are having all these experiences. I mean, what is it they're doing different? Is it their their ceremonies, the language they use? Although most of them speak English, I'm just curious. What is it?
Yeah. To lay the path here is that if you think back, even as little as 200 years ago, the Native Americans had residences and cities, villages set up in areas where many of them still reside today. And back in the olden times, and talking to elders and in reading periodicals from that period of time, there was an expressed respect for a Bigfoot. They allowed them to live in their area. They didn't go out and hunt them. Bigfoot somewhat respected them. They respected the other. There was sort of a mutual understanding between the two where they lived in the same region and shared the same resources. Now, as we move forward into the years, there starts to be evidence that people are hunting, white people predominantly, and every once in a while we take a shot at a Bigfoot, and every once in a while we hit it. But I have yet to meet a Native American that has admitted to taking a shot and hitting a Bigfoot. So the comfort level between those two has been there for hundreds of years. Now, in part of our work in tribal Bigfoot, we went into many of the libraries in the Pacific Northwest and went back hundreds of years in reading the write-ups about different related events to something similar to Bigfoot. Obviously, they weren't called Bigfoot and Sasquatch back 200 years ago. Many times they were called Wild Man. But in the 1920s, there was an article written in the Oregonian newspaper. And what prompted it was a group of people in the woods claimed that they were attacked by a Bigfoot creature. They came back and they told law enforcement about it. Law enforcement made it aware that they were going to take 50 armed people on horseback into the woods and attack the Bigfoot and kill him. Well, a group of 3 Native American tribes in the Pacific Northwest heard about this. They got together and they held a press conference. And this article appeared in the Oregonian. And if you can imagine back in the 1920s how persecuted the Native American was by the general public and how ridiculed they were on a variety of issues, for the 3 tribes to get together and agree to go public and state that don't go out and hunt these things. They aren't animals. They're people. They have a language. We understand it. We communicate with them regularly. They're not bad. They live differently than us, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
So when we found this article, we could never believe that we haven't seen this article someplace else in research.
Exactly.
But there it is. Wow. 3 different tribes coming together and saying, yes, they're different than us. Yes, they look different. Yes, they have hair all over their body. And yes, they have the ability to mimic animals, birds, and things in the woods. And they're experts at camouflage, but they're not animals, and you don't go out and hunt them.
Right.
Which tells us that relationship between Native Americans and Bigfoot, Sasquatch, or Wild Man has been going on for centuries. And I think it goes back to that comfort level between the two, the mutual respect, and maybe some genetic association that we still don't understand. And it is also true that in talking to the elders from various tribes across the U.S., that when you talk to the elders, they say, hey, my parents told me that if you speak to it in our native language, they will understand. And we keep hearing that over and over and over. we also keep hearing on a regular basis from tribe to tribe that when they have tribal jump dances or tribal ceremonies, that music and whether it's the assembly or what it is, brings the Bigfoot into the perimeter of those ceremonies, and at times they can see them on mountaintops and things while this is going on.
Wow. I have heard that. The drumming, like Red Earth and places like that. You know, they've had, so that they seem to be attracted to that, the tribal ceremonies. We have a question from the chat. I'm not sure who has asked this question, and I apologize out there. We're having problems we're just having blog problems, but we did get the question. And somebody is in the wind. Who is that? Okay. Anyway, do Dave and Harvey believe that Bigfoot are associated with reservations because they are specifically interested in Native Americans, or are they just attracted to these wilderness areas?
So I want everyone to have the mindset that we're not saying that these bipeds live solely in the regions around the reservations. But if part of their heritage is that association with tribal Americans or Native Americans, and that comfort zone is that 10-mile perimeter around the reservation, then maybe that's someplace that they continually to go back to, and maybe they like to call that their home at times.
Right.
But as in any type of living society, there's going to be certain groups that live close to the prime property, and there's going to be other people who don't, who are pushed away and have to take secondary and third-level housing or residence in a different region, and they have to go to a more harsh environment, or they have to move further away, or something along those lines. And I'm sure that that's occurring.
Okay. Mike, are you still with us?
Oh, I'm here. I'm just enjoying listening to these guys talk.
Absolutely. Are you outside?
No, I'm sitting right here in my house.
Okay.
Hear wind.
Well, I'm hearing a lot of wind noise, and they're talking about it in the chat. Who's in the wind? But anyway. Okay. All right, and I hate to interrupt what they were talking about. If you gentlemen will continue, can you remember where you were at before I interrupted you with this question?
Well, I was making the association that the Bigfoot doesn't live predominantly on or near the reservation. I mean, sightings have been across the U.S. in a uniform way, but if you look at a reservation map of the U.S., you can see that there's certain conglomerates of sightings close to those reservations. And maybe that's considered their home base for some reason, and they may have to travel further at times to get food and resources, et cetera. Harvey, do you have any other different spin on that than what I put?
Well, I think that what you said is true, but I also think that you have to consider, and I can't speak for all tribes, but I talk about those some guys that I visited with and talked to about. In Oklahoma, reservations existed since about 1835, when they brought the 5 civilized tribes into Oklahoma, and then eventually they brought about 67 tribes into Oklahoma, and now there's about 39 tribes that are federally recognized, and they all have an area. And some of them are very wide, but they have tribal headquarters. They have allotted lands and trust lands, and these lands all connect to federal reserves and federal parks. And I think that for the last 160 years, where there's certain locations where the Indian people would go and have ceremonies, and they've had those ceremonies in those specific areas for over 100 years, and the legends and stories about the Bigfoot coming with them from certain other areas when they moved in from different areas across North America, and they came to Oklahoma. some tribes say that they came with them. So they participated in and watched these ceremonies, and they continue to do that over the years. And we heard that while we were in Hoopa, that years ago, that hundreds of years ago, at ceremonies that they would come down and participate, and then they started watching from the outskirts and then further up in the mountains and watched. And we hear those same stories in Oklahoma, that they would come and observe and watch.
I think that's fascinating that you said that they followed the tribes, because why I say this is one of the research areas that I have down here on the Neches River. I did some research on it to find out what tribe had originally been there. And it turned out to be the Haines, which was an offshoot of the Caddoan tribe. And they were actually moved out and sent to Binger, Oklahoma, which now Binger, Oklahoma is a stronghold for Bigfoot activity. I am just wondering, even though the area on the Neches is still very hot, but so is Binger. And I have to wonder, and I've always wondered this, if they followed the tribe to Oklahoma, because Binger is hot. It's a hot spot.
Well, that's cattle country.
Yep.
Where cattle are, and there's a lot of activity there, and there has been, for that I'm aware of, for 40 years. Stories. I run around some cattle boys, and I've gone to some of those ceremonies and those dances for the last 40 years, off and on with my friend, my Comanche brother. He's part cattle, and they always talk about people singing and out on the outskirts and carrying on, and whoever they might be. They say they're spirits. And then the Choctaws say that the cattle followed, that the Bigfoot followed them. Also, the Iowas say the same thing. They say the same thing. I saw a sketch done in the late 1870s of a Bigfoot that a Iowa did in Silverhorn, and they say that, I asked them, well, this sketch shows a hairy person carrying somebody around, and there's a tree growing out of this guy's back. I said, what's this tree growing out of his back? They said, well, that's because they came from the mountains. And if you know anything about ledger art, and that's how they would identify somebody. They would draw a figure, and then above that they would draw another little figure representing who they are. And
yes.
So I think there's just lots of connections and things that need to be researched and followed up on, and Dave is working diligently in those areas, and we're trying to.
And I am, and I know a lot of people are very excited about what David is doing. Because and I don't mean to talk to you like you're not here, David, but the book is going to be a bestseller. Definitely going to be a bestseller, because there is, especially here in the South, there is such a, well, I guess all over the country, because there are Native American tribes everywhere, and so this doesn't just affect the people in Oklahoma or in the Pacific Northwest. This could be anywhere in the United States, because you have the Seminole in Florida, and you have the Alabama, the Alabama Chicadas, yeah, and you have the Caddoan and the Sioux, and there's tribes you can't even pronounce, and they're everywhere, and this is just fascinating to me, because I've always believed there was a Native American connection. I believe this years ago, and so it's exciting to me to have somebody come on that understands this, that has actually been, basically confirming what I have always believed, because the way the Native Americans lived was the closest to the way I believe the Bigfoot lived. And so there was a relationship there. There was an understanding. They both cared about the earth, and they didn't want to destroy it. You know, they didn't tear it up. They took what they needed and they moved on and they lived peacefully. And I think they're the commonalities between the Sasquatch race and the Native Americans is why there is an affinity between them, even today. Because today the same mentality is there, the same spirit of the people is there. And I think that's why there is this connection. That's my personal opinion. Now, I could be totally off base, but that's where I feel is the connection.
Oh.
What do you
I have a question. I have a question for David Harvey. And this is something that I recently read, and it's something that I had known for a while because of our friend Henry Franzoni did a study of Native American names for Bigfoot, Sasquatch. He plugged those names into the USGS and found that there were many locations that carried these particular names. Well, of course, Skookum, Skookum Meadows, and is just one example. But I read an article from 2005 from I think it was Oklahoma Today magazine talking about the Hoopa Project, but the name Kaimichi was to Native American for meaning go no further. That was what was in the article. Now, I don't know if that's accurate or true. I was wanting to know if Harvey could elaborate if that was accurate in that area, and if they had found the same type of situation in and around Oklahoma and other areas where specific place names were based on Bigfoot, Sasquatch, what the Native Americans were calling them.
Well, that's a good question, and I don't think I'm really qualified to answer that because, like I say, there are 39 different tribes that speak different languages in Oklahoma, and I visited with several of them, and they refer to them as in their own native tongue as medicine people or mountain people or hairy people or giants, or shadow people. Just from visiting here, with different guys that just come up to you and start talking about something, and you're so limited in your time because there may be 30 people standing in a line waiting to say something to you. And
yes.
I just need to be better organized about how we record and identify some of these people and some of their stories. And it's sometimes we're just overwhelmed by the information and the people that want to talk, but they're also very guarded about what they want to say. They're not just going to say this to anybody. I find that some of the tribes, just absolutely once they determined there was a sighting in this area, they just absolutely wanted people not to come in. They didn't into their areas and intrude on their privacy and on the Bigfoot's privacy.
Exactly. They're afraid that if they speak about it, they're going to bring danger not only to them and their families, but also to the tribe of Sasquatch. Absolutely,
and we just see that in so many instances, and there was one name that they referred to here locally that one of the tribes referred to them as the medicine people because they were the keeper of the medicines, and they at times even showed some of the people how to do certain things and how to protect themselves by using certain herbs, and so they referred to them as the medicine people.
That's amazing. That is, I was so excited about this information that I'm hearing. I have a question. Let me see if I can remember it. Do we have any more questions from the chat, Lauren?
Nope.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure. my question is, let me see if I can remember what it is. Mike, do you have another question while I try to remember this, or?
Yeah, I was just getting back to Dave and Harvey about the place names. When I say place names, I'm talking about like a particular location carries a name that is associated with these beings, that the place name was given by Native Americans because of maybe that's where they lived, and like I said, the word Kaimishi that was in the article, the reporter, and now, like I said before, I don't know what the validity of what he stated was, but that his research had found that the people that were moving into the state, sometimes, I don't know, I could remember years and years and years ago, would actually pay Native Americans to guide them through certain areas. And when they would get to what we know now as the Kaimishi Mountains, that was what they would tell them, and it means go no further. And the reason was, in the article, stated that they were afraid of what lived in the mountains there. And so they were telling them to not go into that area. So I was just wondering about the place names of certain locations that may, even I know that there was plenty in Washington, Oregon, and Northern California, and up into the Idaho regions and things, but I didn't know if there was maybe that correlation also in Oklahoma.
There could be. I'm just not familiar with it. I'm just, really,
Okay.
I am touching on some, as far as I'm concerned, on some new territory, some new things, and we could develop this over the next year or year and a half or so. We could develop some. I think we're potentially right on the verge of some great contacts that are people are willing to talk to us.
Okay. Well, another question, and this one is specifically for Harvey. At the conference this year, you're going to have some more of your really cool prints there available for people to purchase from you. Any new ones?
Yes, we are. We're going to have some dimensional sculptures and some press-ons and some new drawings of Bigfoot. And Dave and I we're planning on being there.
Oh, yeah. And I can't wait to meet you both. I can't.
Well, I can speak from experience. Both of their presentations last year at the conference were just completely mesmerizing and amazing. They just they kept you on the edge of your seat while they were talking, and it was a pleasure to get to meet them and hear them speak last year. And I can't wait to be there again this year and listen to them again and hear all the new stuff that they have coming out of Tribal Bigfoot.
Well, a Squatch Mama from the chat has a question. She wants to know if Dave will be available for witness reports again this year at Hanobi.
We will have some time, obviously, when I can fit it in. The problem that Harvey and I had at the last conference is we were pretty much overwhelmed. And,
exactly.
Hey, we like talking to everybody about it, and I can honestly say that everyone we talk to, we learn something. So, if you could shoot us an email, that's probably best, and then we can just make an appointment to set the time aside. So if anybody else walks up, we can already say, hey, we have an appointment. So
okay, this would be at the NABigfootResearch.com website.
The website address is NA, like North America, NABigfootSearch.com, BigfootSearch.com.
Okay. All right. I have a question for you. I remembered what my question was. Well, I did remember what it was. Oh, my gosh. Hold on just a second, because I know, it's been one of those days. What my question was to both of you, and I know that you can't really, you don't want to reveal too much from the book or anything else, but we are going to be asking you some questions about tribal Bigfoot. I know that you've listened and heard a lot of stories, but could you tell us one of the most compelling that you have heard?
Do you want to talk, Harvey, or do you want me to do it?
Why don't you? You interviewed a lot of people, and I interviewed those that you went through and thought would be some of the better ones, but you interviewed a lot more people than I did.
Well, one of the things that we do that I don't know any other group does this, but when we go into an area and we understand that it's been a hotbed for activity, or one specific person even says that they saw Bigfoot in a specific region, we will go out and actively knock on doors in that area and try to solicit more statements, evidence, things along that line. Handle it almost like there was a crime in the area and go out and knock on doors and see if you can find witnesses to it. And so far, that has proved very fruitful to us.
Really?
And one item specifically is, if you look at our website, there's a page called a Bigfoot map. And that's a 4-county region up in Northern California with Hoopa as the center point. We licensed the rights to it from California State Automobile Association, and we plotted 350 sightings and encounters on one side of the map, on the driving side, and then we listed a sentence or two about each event on the other side. And on that one side of the map, directly adjacent to the Marble Mountains Wilderness area, across the highway and maybe 5 miles away is the start of the Siskiyou Wilderness area, which is on the fringe of where the Patterson Gimlin film was done. Right in the middle of that area, there's an area called Dillon Creek. And about 10 years ago, Jeff Meldrum went up Dillon Creek, and he had some incidents occur to him that he attributed to Bigfoot. And that area up Dillon Creek is extremely rugged, extremely wild. And I'd passed through that area many, many times over the years doing research. And I saw a house on the side of the road that was very old, and they had stacks of rocks in the front yard. And I always wanted to stop and talk to these people because, number one, the house was in between two wilderness areas. It sat on the Klamath River, and it was just ideally situated for incidents to happen.
Right.
One day I went in there, knocked on the door, drove up, and out came an elderly Native American woman, very polite.
So what did you say? I have to ask you, what did you just say, to them? How did you approach them? I know Mike Hall has his way of knocking on doors and asking. I'm just curious, what did you say? How did you broach the subject with this woman?
I personally don't have a problem with approaching anybody, and I think it's if you approach somebody and you're polite and you're confident and you're dressed appropriately and you come across as sincere. I've never had anybody that was rude to me, told me to leave, anything along those lines. With her, she came outside, and I put my hand out, and I said, hey, I'm a researcher. I'm here trying to understand the Bigfoot phenomena in your area. You're ideally situated here. You have a beautiful view along the Klamath River. This is an ideal spot. I told her I wish I lived there because the fishing and her location. And I said, if you had the time, I'd really like to talk to you about it. She said, absolutely. She invited me over. Her family came outside. We sat under a tree, and we ended up talking for about 2 hours. Now, when I meet these people, and when I met her, I asked her if she had any Bigfoot sightings because of her relationship between the two wilderness areas. So I essentially opened the door for her to easily say, oh, yeah, we've had a lot of sightings over the years and a lot of incidents. But that's not what was said. And what was said was that her mother and her grandmother had lived on this property, and her family had owned it going back 200 years. The story is in Tribal Bigfoot, by the way. And there's a picture of a family in it. And the gist of the story is that probably about, I'm going to guess, 60 years ago, when this woman was a young girl, they had a niece that came over from the coast to visit them during the summer. And across the river, they had another Native American family that lived. Now, there's relics of the house that are there now, but there's essentially nothing. And during the summer, the Klamath recedes enough and gets slow enough where they can cross the river at their house and get to these people's house on the other side. And once you cross now and you go to the other side, you're just a mile or two from the Marble Mountain Wilderness area, which has a strong history of many, many sightings. So they go across the river, and there's 3 young girls, and everyone's excited because these have been long friends of the family. And the girl that visited from the coast says, hey, before we go over there, I'm going to run over to this berry bush, and I'm going to pick some berries for the family, and I'll meet you guys at the house. The rest of the girls go into the house. The other girl goes towards the berry bush. And that's the last they see of her for about 3 or 4 weeks. And they brought in, I think she said 75 or 100 Native Americans, searched for, 100 square miles and found no trace of her. And then long time after that, she came stumbling back over to that friend's house, clothes and tattered, completely dirty, filthy, saying that a big hairy man had taken her. And
oh my gosh.
The point of that is that I think that these people that report these things are extremely honest. They could have easily fabricated a huge story to tell me about how many Bigfoot they'd seen, but they didn't. And they told me what I believe is a factual story, and it directly aligns with other stories that were written about by a Native American woman in the early 1900s, about 20 miles down the Klamath, in a town called Pequon. And in that region of the Klamath where the Yurok had lived, a woman wrote a story about life of that tribe, and one chapter had to do with the Indian devils. And those were the Bigfoot that used to come and steal women, Native American women, from time to time. Sometimes they'd escape, sometimes they wouldn't. And the point of this story is, I think that no one would have ever heard this story if I hadn't knocked on that door. And I think by going out and being proactive and showing that you're sincere, that slowly these stories will start to come out if the family that's telling the story isn't going to be ridiculed or persecuted about it.
Exactly.
Yeah,
exactly. And knocking on doors is what I do. The guys I research with, they're like, I don't know how you do it. But as a matter of fact, yesterday while I was waiting for the witness we were going to go to the location where he had his incident. While I was waiting there, I noticed a couple on this little dirt road. They were cleaning around a house that was obviously vacant and doing some cleanup work. And I just stepped out of the truck and walked over and handed them a card, introduced myself, and just asked the questions. Just, have you ever? He explained that this was his parents' house. They had passed away. They were just cleaning it up for his brothers and sisters. They were going to use it as a weekend type place, and he grew up there. And I just asked him the questions, and he just was he was honest and said, well, no, I've never had anything happen or seen anything, but if I do, I will call you. And his wife came out and asked questions, and it was just, that's the way I do things. And I'm glad to hear that David does the same thing, because I was kind of like, wow, why aren't more people doing this, being more proactive, like you just said?
Well, because I will answer that, because some of us are just becoming comfortable being a Bigfoot researcher. It's, considering I never had any belief in them at all until about 2001, never watched a Patterson Gimlin film or anything else, and I was always an extremely credible person, and now I am completely involved in something just incredible. And so my issue is I don't have the confidence to go up and knock on a door and ask someone, because I'm still trying to be confident in what I believe. I'm comfortable now if someone says to me, you do what? I've developed a thick skin now. I've had people laugh at me. They make jokes, you know. We all know how that is. But to go up to a total stranger's door and knock on their door, and I'm just going to have to try it. I'm just going to have to try that. We are going to take a quick break. Everyone, just relax, and we'll be back. We'll be taking telephone calls after the break. So everyone, hang on, and we'll be back shortly. On our switchboard, but I just was informed that everyone got kicked out of chat. And about half of them have returned. And thank you for trying to make it back in. And I apologize for all the problems. Normally we have very good luck. I guess we should have said blessings over the show in the beginning like we always do, and we did not. Well, there we are. So all of you out there, if you would like to call in and talk to David Paulides and Harvey Pratt, the number is 646-716-4530. And the numbers in the chat are coming back up, and I'm glad to see everyone returning. Thank you for staying with us tonight. I do have a couple of calls. David and Harvey, are you back with us?
Yes.
Okay. Let's see this first caller. Caller 936, are you just listening in, or do you have a question for Mr. Paulides or Mr. Pratt?
Well, am I on the air?
Yes, you are.
Well, I have questions for him, of course.
Okay.
I wanted to make a comment and see what your thoughts were on it, Dave and Harvey both. I don't think it's so much a matter of being Native American as the way you live, because there's a wealth of information out of Australia where Aborigines have the same kind of encounters and interactions that Native Americans have. The people native to Ecuador, Honduras, Guatemala, and Belize tend to have the same kind of interactions or stories come out of there with what they call the Sissimite. And I was wondering if you think it's more the type of people or just the way they live.
I think you nailed it on the head. The Aborigines are the native Australians the same way the Native Americans are to our land. The Aborigines are to Australia, is the same way the other folks you spoke about are in other countries. It's those long-term relationships. It's the people that have lived around them for hundreds of years that have this relationship, and I think it crosses country to country.
Harvey, what do you say on that?
Well, I agree with Dave. I think that is something that is culturally acceptable among Native American people, regardless of what country you're from. You accept that, and I think it's harder for some people to accept that belief.
To me, it seems like the only people that are truly having problems with this are people who live in cities where they see concrete every day. They're not out there in the woods, living amongst the woods. I recently spoke with a Navajo elder by the name of Leonard Dan. He's 78 years old. I had him on my show, and I talked with him about the Native American tribes that are still out there, living the old ways, unknown to white man. And he told me there's probably about 80 tribes that he knows of. You know anything about that, Harvey?
Now, he told you that there were what?
Probably close to 80 tribes of Native Americans that still live the old ways.
I would think there are probably more than that.
Okay.
Because there's over 300, some odd tribes that are still in North America, and there are a lot of traditional people. And there are, among my own people, we have traditional people, we have Native American people, and then we have people that are not involved in the culture at all, but there are people that we would call them traditional people, and almost every tribe has those. So potentially you could see in excess of 300 different groups that have their own traditional history and their beliefs and things that they do. Sun dancing and different ceremonies.
What he was saying is that there are tribes that still live the old ways, away from society completely. They live away from white man and all his culture, and they're not known to white man. And the only people that ever see him are Native Americans on reservation lands, because they come there to hold ceremonies and to trade. Jewelry that they've made, things that they find out there in the woods, like geodes and different types of things, and they trade those at the post for pots and pans and clothing, so that they don't have to kill animals and wear animal skins. They trade the things they get in the woods or make themselves for items at a reservation. But other than that, no one ever sees them or knows even where they're at, is what he was telling me.
I see. And, that could be possible in some of the areas where there are restricted reservations. Oklahoma does not have reservations per se. We have Indian lands.
Okay.
In country. So if you get into New Mexico and you get some other areas that are totally restricted, Colorado, Arizona, that once you drive onto those lands, they're restricted, and there's not a lot of resources. So they do have to and have maintained a lot of their old ancient cultures. So maybe if he's telling you there are that many, I'm not going to argue with him over that. There possibly is that are not affiliated with the.
Well, Harvey, I'm going to go to your site and send you an email so that you can contact Leonard Dan and speak with him. I'll give you his number because he'll talk to anybody. But he's a 78-year-old Navajo that has more experiences in life than I could cover in 10 shows.
Okay. Did you have any more questions?
No, I just wanted their thoughts on that. Thank you for taking my call.
You're very welcome, and thanks for calling in. We have another caller. Well, I believe I know who this is.
Am I on?
You are on. How are you doing tonight, Henry?
I'm doing fine, Miss Laurie. Miss Lauren, how y'all doing? Hugs to both of you.
We're doing good, except for Blog Talk. It's just not our friend tonight.
Oh,
not
I know.
at all.
I have been having the devil of a time getting in the chat. I cannot get in the daggum chat for nothing.
I know our chat numbers are way down, and I suspect that is Blog Talk that, in the beginning of our show, we couldn't even take any callers.
Oh,
and I just thought that was nuts, But we're so glad that you were able to call in tonight. And, how are you doing?
I'm doing just fine. I want to say hello to David and Harvey. I was fortunate enough to have them. I've been fortunate enough to have them on my show twice. Now.
I'm thrilled to have them here tonight. I am.
They're great guests, and, of course, the books are terrific. But I wanted to ask David and Harvey, there's a new article by D.B. Donlin on his blog, The Blog Squatcher, blogsquatcher.blogspot.com. You just do a Google search for Blog Squatcher, and it's called Gorilla's Clap. And apparently it sort of correlates in with the Bigfoot research because some Bigfoot researchers have recently been wondering if the infamous wood knock might be a loud hand clap. After all, large palms ought to make a pretty big sound, right? And now comes word that gorillas clap their hands. What is Dave and Harvey's opinion on the possibility of the so-called wood knocking sounds being caused by perhaps the hand clapping?
Well, I'll speak to that a little bit. When we purchased Ray Crow's research 2 years ago, we got a moving van full of documents, and some of those documents go back to the late 1950s and are from an absolute cross-section of researchers who started way back in the late 40s, and from George Haas in the Bay Area all the way up through Jim McLaren and Peter Byrne, and there's just mountains and mountains of papers to read, and honestly, I spend a great deal of my time at night reading these documents. And somebody wrote in the 1960s, and they did some testing on this, that the best way they could mimic the sounds that they hear from the wood knock is by taking actually a sledgehammer and hitting a tree was the best way that they could replicate it. They tested this at like 3 different locations in the Northwest, and people came back and said that sounded the most similar to what they were hearing. And this was a 2-page report that I read maybe 6 months ago about it. And I've also heard that some others have thought that it was some type of guttural sound that they thought that a Bigfoot could make as well, rather than actually knock on knock. Since, as best I've known, nobody's ever seen one would knock another tree.
Right.
So I think the jury's out on it. It could be a variety of things. I'm not sure.
Mm-hmm. I'd like to comment on that. I'm not an expert in any of these areas, but what I've seen is among gorillas is they chest clap. They don't hand clap.
See, I've heard that too. I've heard that too.
Rather than their hands. So and it's a very hollow sound, but that's just a thought.
Mhm. Yeah, Diane Stocking recently said that there's a possibility that the wood knocking sounds could be caused by them hitting their chests. By him hitting their chest, they may have a hollow chest cavity, or it could also be jaw popping, perhaps.
Henry, I think it could be any of those things. I'm not sure. I don't have the expertise there to make a decision. And until somebody actually sees something doing it, we won't really know.
Oh, I agree.
But listening to it, and I've heard them. I've heard the sound that has been classified as a wood knock. To me, and I've heard the chest clapping. To me, the wood knock sounds like wood on wood. It's very sharp wood on wood sound. And I've also heard the chest slapping, which sounded like when someone slaps their chest. And so, to me, I believe this is my opinion, whether it matters to anyone or not, but my opinion, I believe it's 2 different things. Mm-hmm. And someone had told me a long time ago that often when they will knock on a tree, they'll knock at the base of the tree, and the tree works as an antenna. The sound travels up the tree and out. And expands over the forest where it's easily heard over long distances. I've experienced where one is knocked in one location, and then there was another knock that responded to that knock, and then another knock. It was almost like they were tri-locating each other. And I've heard that. I've heard knocks when I went into the forest and a knock when I came out. And it was so consistent. And I just feel like that they were using it as a notifying others like themselves that I had entered the woods and then knocked again when I left. And I had people witness it. So anyway, I just thought I would mention that. Go ahead, Henry. I'm sorry to interrupt.
I'm not going to apologize for jumping in here too, Henry, but
no
actually
problem, Mike.
We have recordings of that from the Neches River bottoms of these knocks. That what they are. To me, I agree with Lori. They sound very much like wood on wood, because the description that I always give is if somebody took a Louisville slugger and just walloped the hell out of a tree with it.
Yeah.
And the same thing, we have
several
recordings. Yeah, and we have the recordings of what Lori was just describing, as far as we have a recorder set up and have a wood knock fairly close to in proximity, and then 10, 15 seconds later you hear a very distant knock in the distance. So I don't know. Form of communication or locator. Hey, where are you at? I'm over here, type thing. But I'll have to look. I'll have to look up that blog on Blog Squatcher and read that, because it's still interesting.
It really is. It's a fascinating article. DB always writes some really thoughtful stuff. From what I understand, our good friend Donna is going to be on Billy's show tomorrow night.
Oh, on Billy Willard?
Yeah.
Okay. I'll have to get over there and listen to that.
Have y'all read her experiences, her recent experiences?
Yes, I did.
Really?
I did.
Stuff.
Yes, it really is. It really is. She was very excited, you know.
Yeah.
And I just can't wait to hear her tell about it. I do have a question from the chat, and Henry, you don't have to run off, but let me go ahead and answer these questions from the chat, if you don't mind.
Oh, sure.
Does Dave believe that Bigfoot's behavior towards humans has changed over the last couple of centuries, or are they more timid now? Are they more timid now than they used to be, based on the stories that you've heard?
No, I don't believe so.
Okay, so they continue to be the same now as they were then.
I think there are isolated incidents that cross the behavioral screen from A to Z. And I think if you look hard enough, you'll find them.
I see. Okay, and this question from Mr. Paulides from Pumpkin Toes. The North American Bigfoot Search is a relatively new research organization. Is that correct?
We're about 5 years old now.
Okay. How different? How are you different from other Bigfoot organizations?
I think one of the things that separates us from many other groups is that I'd like to think that we actually are bringing forth new and evolving information, and we're putting it in front of the public. We differentiate ourselves, obviously, from anyone else in that we're doing this full-time. We've got a concerted professional effort where we bring in the best people at different levels to give us their expertise and hopefully give us some answers to this complex equation. The best example of that is when we started the project, we wanted to know exactly what we were dealing with. We heard a lot of stories that this is some evolved gorilla, ape. So what are we dealing with? Are we dealing with that, or what other people say is a pseudo-human? It kind of has a human kind of face. And since coming from a law enforcement background myself, I knew that a forensic artist at a high level can bring on expertise to identify exactly what we're looking for. I worked around some forensic artists in San Jose police that were outstanding. They draw a sketch of someone who's a suspect in a crime. We'd end up catching the guy, and it looked like the artist drew the suspect while he was drawing the sketch, and both were in the same room. The reality is that Harvey is exactly that way. And there's some examples in tribal Bigfoot that Harvey's drawn suspects, and they're caught, and it looks like he drew a sketch of them while they were sitting in the same room. That's how accurate he is. So our comfort level that the sketches of the Bigfoot that Harvey's drawn, are they accurate? All you have to do is look at a few of these witnesses' face when Harvey's done, and they are amazed at how accurate and how quick he is.
Oh, Harvey's great.
Yes, he's very gifted. He is definitely very gifted. This question is for Harvey from Pumpkin Toes. They want to know, is it more difficult to draw a Bigfoot compared to a human when you do these composite drawings?
That's a good question. Witnesses are witnesses. You know, people that see things under certain circumstances. There's a lot of variables in what someone sees and the circumstances, and when someone is threatened or has been injured, the trauma is a little bit different than. But they're still credible.
Yes.
You see someone that has had a sighting of a Bigfoot, that they could be threatened to a certain degree, but not in the instance of someone having a gun on them or witnessing someone being killed or something like that. So you see someone that sees a Bigfoot, there's some, it's just shock and awe about the situation. But still, the circumstances are almost the same in interviews. There's very little difference in how I interview both subjects. The interviews are based on a lot of things like light, time, distance. When we talk about the light that they see somebody under and the distance that they see them, and things that happen in between that distance, and how long they see somebody. If they see them under a certain amount of time, did all the things that they're telling me about, is that capable of occurring? So I think that there's very little difference, other than the trauma is a little bit different.
Yeah.
Well, before I go, I was going to take off. Before I go, a little off-topic news. #1 movie in the country right now, G.I. Joe, The Rise of Cobra. Went and saw it the other night. It was great.
Oh, my goodness. A movie review.
Yeah.
I do have a lot of people talk about that movie. They've been wanting to go see it.
I do have a review of it on my blog.
Okay.
Those of you who are interested. So, yo, Joe, and we'll talk to y'all later.
All right. Thank
Bye,
you
Henry.
for calling in, Henry.
No problem.
All right.
Y'all have a good one. Bye.
And Lori,
Yes.
I do have a question that something that I read on your website, Dave, is that you actually sat down and interviewed Patricia Patterson, the widow of Roger Patterson. And I'm just curious, it was very interesting what you wrote, but I just wanted to know what knowledge did you glean from that interview with Patricia Patterson about the film itself and about Roger in particular.
I'll say from the start that there was never a question in our mind after we were in existence for 3 years that Patterson-Gimlin film didn't catch a real Bigfoot. They caught one on film. There's absolutely no doubt in our mind. There's a very complex series of questions about the events surrounding that footage, and I write about some of them in Tribal Bigfoot. Number one, there's absolutely too many incorrect and complex statements about the timeline from the point that they leave Bluff Creek until the time the film's mailed, arrives in Yakima, how it got there, et cetera, et cetera. Something is amiss there. There's also Patricia Patterson, I'd never met the lady before, but I can honestly tell you she's one of the nicest people I've ever met in my life. She told me at the beginning that she didn't want this to be an interview, and I was coming up there specifically to look at 5 transparencies that Roger made after he got the footage. What he did is he took the footage down to a lab in Yakima. They set it up so that they took 5 high-resolution photos with a 35-millimeter camera of 5 of those frames. Another researcher prior to me, about 6 years ago, went up to Yakima and wanted to scan these frames, these transparencies, and so they could look at them. And they realized that it was going to take hours and hours to scan them at this high resolution, so they did it only at a very low resolution. Patricia went to the lab with me, and we did this at the highest resolution they've ever been done, and it reveals much, much, much more detail than's ever been seen by anyone in any picture before. And I know that we were the first ones, and we are the only ones right now that hold those transparencies. So when I hear people make statements about the film and, oh, this is really that way, I just giggle to myself because right now it's unimportant what the rest of the world thinks. I know what we've got in our hands. I know that that's a real biped. I know that there are certain things about that film that don't make sense to us. We're not going to make a statement about it right now, but I will say that it's an ongoing research project We recently got contacted by an individual who owned a second-generation copy of the Patterson-Gimlin film. It's been in our possession for about 2 months, being studied heavily. What the public sees is a fourth-generation copy. And
to me, that's good enough. I'm not complaining. I believe what I see on the fourth one.
Well, but it's not necessarily what you see to believe or not believe, but one of the questions I had about that film after working with Harvey for a while is that Patterson-Gimlin biped has an enormous amount of hair compared to every other witness I've ever interviewed that describes seeing a Bigfoot. Namely, they describe a Bigfoot that has a very thin layer of hair. Most of the time they can see through the hair and see the skin underneath. It's not as though it's a bare fur hair where you can't see the skin. This is like almost, many times it could be described as a very, very heavily haired human, almost.
Okay.
So that's one of the issues about it. Second issue is that out of all of the sketches Harvey and I have ever worked on together, where Harvey draws and I find the witness, there's only been 1 or 2 out of the 100 maybe people that I've talked to that have ever said that this biped has a full face of hair. Only 2. Yet that Patterson-Gimlin biped has a full face of hair. Third issue, 80 to 90% of all the witnesses describe seeing a Bigfoot Sasquatch that is consistent physically with a male. That's 80 to 90%, maybe more than 90%. Yet they catch a female on that film.
Right.
So you start to think about, and the fourth thing, which is absolutely the most amazing feature about that film, is that how many people were walking around the woods in 1967 that had the ability to catch anything on film for a minute? You know, across the U.S., maybe there were 50 at any one time. Now there's maybe 500,000 based on video cameras.
Yes.
So look at the...
But it's only seconds at a time, though. Seconds.
Well, if you think about the percentage of increase since 1967 of people's ability to catch something like that on film, it's astronomical. Yet, since then, there has been nobody that's come close to getting the footage and come public with it that Patterson-Gimlin did. So there are 4 astronomical odds that come into play here that they caught that biped the way they did. And if you think about any one of those 4, to us, it's unreal that those odds all came together and all played out at that exact point at Bluff Creek. There has to be some rational reason how and why that happened. I don't believe it's a fluke and it was just coincidence. There has to be some reason.
So you don't think it's just right place, right time, you know, just happenstance that they came upon? There was a reason for them. Somehow, some way, there was a reason that they were there at that exact moment to capture that film footage.
Well, we know part of the reason about why they were there. I mean, in just talking, Al Hodgson is a great friend of mine, and he's 83 years old, lives in Willow Creek. He was one of the people that made Roger aware that there was increased activity in that area, because he used to drive up to Onion Mountain, Blue Mountains, and down around Bluff Creek, and he had seen hundreds of tracks in his past. And he was one of the people that gave him the heads up that there was increased activity in that area at that date. So the rationale about why they showed up isn't in question in my mind. The rational question I have is that you hear people say, well, I don't believe in coincidences. Well, okay, maybe it's a coincidence that I'm in the woods and I see a female Bigfoot. Maybe it's a coincidence I see a Bigfoot female with full facial hair. And as you start to string out the odds of everything coming into play, there's something inside of all of us that think about this daily, that the odds of catching this at that level, there has to be a catalyst for this.
Right.
Well, I agree with you. Do you believe after you've looked at the transparencies and the enhancement, do you believe that this was set up, not hoped, but set up?
And what do you mean by that?
What I mean by that is that that it was not hoped, but that the situation was such that this filming was able to be done. And without going into a conspiracy theory, but that possibly that perhaps there was one in captivity and had been released, and they filmed it as it was released, or something like that, where they had the absolute opportunity. Because look at the kind of camera they had, and look at the way everything was all set up. It was almost as if it was a production. I believe it is a real creature, and but I don't know. I've always felt that way ever since I saw it. I felt that it was real. It was real. Now, a lot of people, well, I'm not going to say a lot, but there are a few that have the reservations about what they've seen. But could it be a possibility that it was a production of sorts? In other words, the whole situation was set up. The camera was there. The person to film it was there. The creature was there, and it was all set up ahead of time. Is there a possibility of this, do you believe?
You know, I've never heard the idea that they had it confined or caged or somehow, and they let it loose. I think if they had it in that confined an area, that it would be beyond them not to come forward with it and show the world what they had. I
agree.
I don't think that was the case, and I don't think that it was staged per se, because the quality of the actual footage isn't superb. There's, as you look at it frame by frame, it goes in and out of focus during many points, but there has been some cutting and splicing of that film, and so there has been some manipulation of it at some level. And the extent of that manipulation isn't to say that they've changed the appearance of the biped, but I just think that there's much more to the entire story than what's been said. And as a group,
I think we all feel that way, though. I think we all feel like there's always more to every story. There's only so much that can possibly be told. And so you feel that there is more to this story than we're being allowed to know. Is that what you're saying?
I'll say I think that there's a bigger story behind the story we even know today. And whether we ever know for a fact that's occurred, that's the million-dollar question. But if we continue down the path we are, meaning my organization, I say that within the next year to 18 months, we'll have it figured out. And it's through the cooperation of people sending us in a second-generation film, us getting this high-resolution scans done. There's no way that Roger and Bob could have known that digital imagery could be at the point it was 40 years later after this film being done. There's no way they could have known.
No.
And as I tell people that say, oh, that Patterson Gimlin film was fake, I say, hey, give me 2 hours of your life. I'll show you why that thing is real. And after you see the flexion in the muscles as it's walking and certain other factors in that film when it's stabilized and you show it frame by frame, plus John Green took a copy of this film down to Disney Studios after it was completed, and Disney Studios, which made the best costumes in the world in the late 1960s, they made a statement that there was no way they could ever do as well as that.
No, because they didn't have stretched fur back then. Everything would have been it would have been a baggy suit. There's no way that the suit could have conformed. They didn't have the technology in those days to make that, to design a costume that would hug the body like this one did. Have you've seen Bill Munn's study on this, haven't you?
Yes.
Bill Munn's study on the Patterson film?
Yes, I have.
Okay. Well, he makes a very good point, that physically a human body, even a tall man, could not fit in a costume and make it work the way that Patty moves. They don't have the body length would not have been correct. The shape of the head, the slope of the forehead. There was no way this person could see where they were going if they were in a costume. The whole way the skin is tight on the muscles and the muscles movement. There's no way in those days that they could have even manufactured anything that would come across as realistic. And I do have a remark from Campfire Shadows. He says, "Is it not a mistake to use Patty as the base for all Bigfoot?"
Well, and that's a good question. And if you look at the sketches in our book, I want people to be the best judge of that. But let me go back to the book and what Harvey did with that Patterson Gimlin biped. One thing as a group we always wanted to understand is what the facial qualities were of Bigfoot compared to what all the accusations are out there in the world. And since Patty is the one that's caught on film the longest, even though our sketches, the vast majority, don't have the hair quality on the face that Patty does, one of Harvey's expertise is forensic sketching of people and changing the appearance of people based on, say, a bank robber goes into a bank and has a beard, and they think that it's a fake beard, or they think that the guy's going to go shave and change his appearance. They'll go to Harvey and they say, "Harvey, we want you to take that beard off that sketch and let's see what it looks like. Or take a beard off of a bank photo and we want to see what the guy looks like without the beard." Well, let's apply Harvey's expertise to the Patterson Gimlin film and take the facial hair off the Bigfoot and let's see what it looks like. Now,
wow.
Before I say anything more, that sketch is in Tribal Bigfoot. And honestly, when he gave it to me, actually before he gave it to me, he gave me a call when he had it completed. And Harvey, do you remember what you said?
Not exactly.
He said, "I'll never forget." He goes, "Dave, I think you're onto something here." And the point is that it's a remarkable sketch that goes back to that relationship between Native Americans and Bigfoot. Now, one thing that I'll let everybody know right now is that several months ago I was having a conversation with Doug Hychuk from Monster Quest.
Oh, yes, he's a fascinating man. Fascinating. Go ahead.
And I listened to your interview with him the other night. One thing that I don't agree with, but Doug had a book forwarded from us. Actually, Hancock House, our publisher, sent him a copy of Tribal Bigfoot. And he saw what Harvey had done with Patty. And he said, "Dave, that was a remarkable sketch, but do you know that I had that done 3 years ago?" I said,
"Wow.
Well, why didn't you have it in an episode?" And there was a long hesitation. And I says, "I know why, Doug." And he says, "What's that?" And I says, "It takes the monster out of the quest."
Yes, it does.
That's the reality, and you're not going to see it on a show.
Well, I think that he's coming along there, though. He's becoming a little more open-minded. Now, I'm not presuming to know how Doug feels, but I noticed that even in the last interview that we did with him, that he was a little more, leaning a little more less ape and more towards human qualities. Or maybe he was just for the sake of our show. We do have a couple of phone
research. I don't think that our research falls in line with what he wants to present. And if you'll notice, We've been on this for 5 years. We've come out with 2 books. I think we've come out with some pretty credible research, and you've never seen us on his show.
No. And that's a shame.
Well, ask
That's
yourself
a shame.
why.
Do you think that maybe the world is not prepared to hear what you have found? Maybe the network's not prepared to hear what you have found.
Well, I don't think that in some people's minds it makes for good play, and it doesn't bring a scare factor to the TV, and it might make the subject even more mundane. And in my mind, that mundane quality actually makes it all more believable.
Absolutely.
Yes, I agree. Yeah. I agree. We do have a couple of phone callers, and I don't mean to change the subject, but they've been online for quite a while. Let me see what they have to say, okay? Area code 828. Do you have a question, or are you just listening in?
Hi, guys. It's JB here. How you doing?
Hello, JB. Thank you for calling in.
Actually, we're not going to change the subject. I want to get back to what you were talking about. First of all,
Wonderful.
Dave and Harvey, you've done a marvelous job. I have Hoopa. I don't have Tribal yet. But mostly for Harvey, I had heard for many years descriptions by eyewitnesses and also seen the drawings and of a very ape-like, and I'll use the word that I don't use for the Bigfoot, for the Sasquatch, and that is creature. And then I got a number of sketches, drawings, and paintings from someone in which they had very, very human qualities in their faces. And then when I got Hoopa, I see your illustrations showing the same thing that I got from this other individual. And I think you just did a marvelous job. Now, I fully realize that you were working from an eyewitness and that you kept working until he said, the witness said, that's it, and then you stopped. But you did it, and you did a great job, and I thank you for it because you provided a lot of confirmation for me.
Well, thank you. Let me just tell you that we have met numerous people over the last several years that have come up and said the very same thing to us, that I didn't know what to expect when we started doing this, and people came up and said, you're exactly what I saw, but why are we not getting this from other researchers or other people? Why do they keep saying that it's more of an animal than of a human nature quality? I'm just don't quite understand what's going on with that. When we seem to be finding more and more people say this is what we're talking about, and
Exactly.
not so much the ape quality, you know. And my thoughts are, we are constantly as human researchers and human people are finding creatures all over the world that we've never seen before, and we're discovering things almost on
once a week at least. Yes.
Yeah, on a daily basis we're finding something, that we never knew about, and things that we've seen, it's not like they try to get away from us. You go to Africa, you can go up in the mountains and you will see them. It's not like they do certain things and they communicate with other people. They stay to themselves, and we see just the opposite, or we hear just the opposite among Bigfoot, that they have a tendency to hide from us and do things and have skills and abilities and they associate, and animal creatures do not do those things.
No. And just another quick observation or possibility, whatever. Just as we have different races, so it could be, I would suppose, that among the Sasquatch there are different races, which slightly different, but they're all
or
Sasquatch.
different genetic qualities, possibly, like some are hairier than others, just like in the human race.
Yes.
Yes.
And, and all creatures communicate. It doesn't make any difference if you're a bird or a cricket, and now I see that mosquitoes are communicating with one another, and we're just learning that. So everybody communicates.
Mosquitoes do around me.
I know. I wish they would just commit suicide. I don't know why. I suppose they're food for some animal, but I've never understood the use of them, mosquitoes. But
that animals communicate with one another, whether you're a bird or a deer. I mean, I see deer, that make different sounds and stomp and do things, and I watch wildlife. I live on 160 acres, and there's all sorts of wildlife that come up, and I see all sorts of things. Everybody communicates. Why do they not? Why would they be different? They must communicate.
Exactly. Well, we've always believed they communicate, but what has become remarkable is that we're finding out that they communicate in a language that would require them to have vocal cords very much like our own. Would require them to have a tongue that touches the roof of their mouth and the back of their teeth like ours. And the only difference between them, which we had R. Scott Nelson on one of our shows, and he said theirs is not very different than ours, he believes, but it is the sheer lung capacity that makes their sounds different than ours. And so, we're finding out a lot about the Sasquatch, that there are more and more, and we're not trying to humanize them. It's not that we're trying to humanize them, it's just that the evidence keeps pointing to it.
Yeah, what if the qualities are there? I mean, you can't deny that.
You can't, and I think that people want to make an ape out of them because that makes them comfortable. To say there is a Gigantopithecus offshoot running around out there in the woods, and that's not true. What the evidence is showing is that it is not anything like a Gigantopithecus, that it is more a human-type species.
Well, as far as Gigantopithecus is concerned, as last I heard, they'd only found a couple of teeth.
Yes. So, JB, if you'll hang on the line, we do have another caller, and I want to hurry up and get them in. Hold on just one moment. 936, you're on the air. Do you have a question?
Hello, Lori.
You don't? Are you just listening in?
Lori?
Okay. Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I hear you fine, Jason. How are you doing?
Oh, doing pretty good. I got busy and I had to call in and everything. I've enjoyed what I've got to hear of the show. You brought the different Bigfoot races. I was going to ask, had he heard anything or had any knowledge of the snouted variety, like we had talked about the other day?
That's a very good question. Have you heard any reports or had anyone tell you of a Sasquatch that had a prominent snout?
Harvey, you want to talk to that?
Yeah, I will. I think that question has just really shocked me because I have heard that here in Oklahoma, that there is association with the Bigfoot. They said that they run around with another creature that has an extremely big nose. And this is the first time I've ever said anything to anybody except to Dave.
Well, here we go. You get it new. Go ahead.
I had never heard that, but I had a very credible Native American tell me that just this year that he observed some Bigfoot, and he also observed a creature with a big snout, and I didn't know what to think about that. And I'm going to make a point to try to contact him again and do a drawing.
You can contact Lori. She's seen one.
Well, I saw one. I sure did. And I know people that have seen them. And
never heard.
You know, can you hear me? Okay, I don't know. My signal is running in and out. Am I breaking up on you?
No, I hear you.
Loud and clear to me.
Okay. Well, that's another story altogether that I'd love to tell you in person. I want to say this about Jason, who's on the line right now. I researched with him the other night. We did get some calls that I honestly and truly believe, even though I didn't see the Bigfoot do it, I believe it was a Sasquatch that we heard call back. Jason is an excellent researcher. I was very honored to be out there with him and very impressed with the way he did things. And I just wanted to let everyone know that. He's wild and crazy, but when he gets out in the field, he is totally professional. And I just wanted to let everyone know that I went out there with him, and I know this. Jason, do you have any other questions?
Lori, what can I say? I am astonished.
Well, I just can't wait till we can go out again. I was just floored.
I don't know. I just hope that you didn't lure another one of those snouted ones out there.
No. That was the first and I hope the last time for me.
Yeah.
We do have some questions. Oh, go ahead.
It was an honor to be there. And everything to have Miss Lori come out to my main stomping grounds and look around and then validate what I had.
Fantastic place. I can't wait to go back. Thank you for having me.
Everybody else get on the line, and I'll listen to the rest of the show. Thank you, gentlemen.
Okay.
And,
thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Pumpkin Toes wants to know, well, first, Elusive one has a question. So Dave and Henry, I think it's David and Harvey, have they any DNA from a Bigfoot? And if so, how did you find it or get it?
Well, we have been working on 2 separate hair samples for the last 2 years. And as anyone out there knows, the extraction of DNA, especially from hair, has taken some quantum steps towards the positive in the last 18 months. And there are certain inhibitors that are in Bigfoot hairs that restrict the ability to extract that DNA, whereas it could be easily taken from most animals and humans without problem. There's something about a Bigfoot hair that causes complications. It's only been within the last 6 months that we've overcome many of those obstacles, and we're probably headed towards the finish line here in the next 6 months to putting it on a tree and truly understanding a relationship between several different samples. And those have come out of the Northern California areas around Hoopa where we've worked and built relationships, and they've occurred in known sighting locations.
Okay, we were running down on the wire, and I'm going to get these questions asked for those in the chat that will lose sound here shortly. I will ask these questions. If you'll refer to the archives, you'll get to hear the answers. Everyone, we want you to come back next week for Eric Altman. Eric Altman will be on the show, and we want you all to come back, and thank you for coming, everyone. The next question is from Pumpkin Toes. Will there be another book?
Oh, that Pumpkin Toes. If you would have asked me that 3 or 4 months ago, I would have said no. I think we turned the corner with tribal. We answered most of the big questions, but just in the last 6 months, some things have surfaced that have inspired me. And maybe I'll know more in the next 4 to 6 months for sure, but there might be one, there might not. We'll see.
Okay. Also, Shadow Girl wants to know, what do the guests think about the possibility of Bigfoot catching our diseases?
Harvey, you have any thoughts along those lines?
Catching diseases?
Yes, like a human diseases, just like the Native Americans caught smallpox. way back when.
Sure, why not? I think that's entirely possible. You know, their systems have got to be cleaned to a certain degree. Why shouldn't they? You know, they're just like anybody else. They should, you know, they probably will and probably could catch diseases from, you know, if they're digging in garbage cans or something like that, or getting some kind of bacteria. And there's certain things about their system that may enable them to fight off some things, because maybe they do eat some putrid foods, you know.
Oh yeah.
Right.
So you don't believe that they may have different enzymes in their stomach to digest raw meat, whereas we don't have that capability anymore. You believe that possibly we have lost a lot of our once natural capabilities to digest certain foods, where they haven't, or maybe even have evolved to where they can digest certain kinds of foods and have certain immunities that we don't have.
Well, I think they probably do, but I think that they could still be capable of catching things that we have, and they may have had them all the time, you know, like cancer or TB or some kind of disease that kills just a lot of people, you know, a long time ago.
What in the world?
Oh. Oh. Well, Dave, Harvey, I had when we first started the show and was talking about the hair samples that we were, my group that I work with, that we had actually had a laboratory in California that's working on doing exactly what you were talking about, getting the DNA extracted and trying to do a sequence. Just to let you know, that hair sample was found. We were actually very honored to be invited to go on to tribal lands in Oklahoma, and that's where we found this hair sample. And just letting you guys know that we're kind of on the same path, trying to figure out what, or at least the lab is trying to figure out what these particular problems are, and that we've been working on trying to get those worked out. But so you guys think that here in the next few months that there's going to be some answers drawn from your results as well?
I think that we're headed down the path, and we've ran into just about every obstacle you can imagine, and the PhDs in the lab have been real proactive in searching out expertise to overcome the issues. And I think a lot of times many of these labs, just reading the reports I've read from the last 40 years, have thrown up their hands at times and not tried to find experts to help them overcome the problems. But what's happened with the group that we're with is they have some resources, and they have some people out there that are real experts at this, and plus our people have some real concerted interest in the topic, and that's helped a lot. And that's the only reason why I'm saying that sometime in the next 6 months or so, I think we'll have some answers.
Well, and just in what you just said right there, I think we were lucky enough that the gentleman that initiated the contact with us, there was already a genuine interest in the subject matter in the first place. That once he got the samples and started doing what he needed to do, his initial interest in the first place drove him to go further and further and further, and to keep going with that. So that's great to hear that others. Sir?
I think that's what you need. You need that interest level.
Right. Well, speaking for myself, it's been a great honor to get to talk to you and listen to your stories and listen to the research that you're doing and everything, and I'm just blown away by it. And I look forward to meeting you guys again in Oklahoma and hearing what you present there as well. And
I know, I can't wait. I hope that I get to personally meet both of you and shake your hands and maybe get the opportunity to spend some time with you. away from everybody else, and just somehow maybe we'll meet up at a campfire somewhere along the way at Hanobi. But I would love to talk to you guys. I still have several questions, but a lot of them I didn't want to ask on the air or in archives. They're kind of controversial. But hopefully when I see you in Oklahoma, I'll be able to take you aside and ask you what you think about certain things. And we want to thank you very much for coming on our show. We really, truly enjoyed it. Both of you did a marvelous job. What you're doing for this field is just incredible, and we thank you, and there's a lot of people out there that really appreciate what you're doing. And hopefully someone will approach you and agree to do like a Nat Geo special, something to where this can be exposed and out there where people can see what you've found, because it's wonderful, and I just feel like it's being even though your books have been very, very well sought after and are being sold really well and everything like that, it's still not a complete media like the television would be. And I would love to see a documentary done on the Hoopa Project and Tribal Bigfoot on both of you. I would love that. I don't know how that can be arranged, but I hope that someday somebody does approach you on that. Would you be willing to do something like that if you had that opportunity?
Well, I think Harvey and I are open to a lot of different things. It's I suppose if the right people came along and they were willing to take the topic seriously and in the right format, we'd be willing to do it.
Yes, I agree with that.
Yes,
and
I hope somebody does come along.
Yes. Well, we won't keep you much longer. Does anyone else have anything to say to Harvey and David before we let them go on with their busy lives? We've took up enough of their good time. And does anyone else have anything to say?
No, I'm just. It's just been an honor to sit and hear them speak about the subject that is obvious to me is a genuine passion with them, and like I said, I look forward to getting to share the stage again with them this year in Oklahoma, and hearing their presentations as well, and just it's been my honor to get to talk to you tonight, both of you.
Hey, well, you guys, we're just living a dream.
We are. We are.
Yes, we are. We're living a dream.
I can't think of a better life, though. I've never been so passionate about something in my entire life. And sometimes I believe that you have a destiny. And when you strike on that destiny and it gets in your blood and you can't let it go, then it is what you're supposed to do. And in this, I believe that we all have this in common. And so I want to thank you. And I'm very honored, as Mike says, that you came on the show. And I hope I hope that I get to meet you in person. And I guess we'll say good night. Do you fellows have any closing remarks before we say good night?
Well, when we meet, I want to draw that snout, this guy with the big snout. I want to interview you and draw it. Let's see what he does. I want a drawing of your viewing of the creature with the big snout. Well,
now I saw him at a distance, but I can give you, it was quite a ways, but I did notice a very pronounced snout from his profile.
If you go to Hanobi, let's do that.
Okay. I am game for that. I will sure do that.
All right.
Okay. Okay. Well,
I've had a great time. It's been enjoyable, and like I said, we're just living the dream.
Yes, we are. Yes, we are.
Thanks a lot to all of you. You guys have been great hosts, and we appreciate the time you've given us.
Oh, and thank you. The thank you comes from us.
It's our pleasure.
Yes.
We look forward to meeting you in Hanobi.
See you in Hanobi.
Okay, we'll see you guys there.
Yes.
Million.
I'm going to be front and center. I'll be waving my hand.
Really forward to the meeting.
All right. I'm looking forward to meeting y'all, too. Well, I guess that's it for Night Callers, everyone. Good night, and next week we have Eric Altman. So everyone, please tune in, and have a great week, everyone. Bye.
All right, good night. Good night.
Good night.